Absolutely. I mean, not one promise has been kept to Black Americans in this country when every bit of prosperity you enjoy was built on our backs. 400 years of labor for free. And we never got our 40 acres and a mule.
I think you've got your reparations, Ayanna. You're 50 years old, you never had a job, married to a jailbird thug, ex-drug dealer, and you're worth $10 million, including a mansion on Martha's Vineyard. I think you've gotten your fair share of reparations. But she wants more.
And we are still, harmed by practices like redlining and appraisal bias.
Appraisal bias.
And so we are long overdue for reparations. I'm proud to be the lead sponsor of H.R. 40. Black folks are certainly deserving of redress and reparative work, and one bill will not undo centuries of harm.
They own $10 million worth of real estate, including a mansion on Martha's Vineyard. But she wants reparations.
How gullible do you have to be? I'm all about supporting whatever is going to cost the taxpayers the least amount of money as somebody who wants to protect taxpayer dollars. That was Governor Maura Healey defending her state giving a $2 billion contract to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley's husband, and she calls it saving taxpayer dollars. How gullible do you have to be? Here's the deal. Springfield, Massachusetts needs a new courthouse, so the state awarded a contract to Ayanna Pressley's husband and his partners to build a new one for $600 million. Then hubby and partners get to keep the building and rent it back to the state for 40 years. That's how you make the leap from $600 million to $2 billion. Can someone explain to me how this is saving taxpayers money? If you're going to spend $500 or $600 million to build it, wouldn't it make more sense to just own it instead of spending another $1.5 billion to rent it? Healey says she's saving money because Ayanna Pressley's husband's bid was the cheapest one on this ludicrous plan. But real savings would be not using a government project to funnel $2 billion to a congresswoman's husband, who, by the way, did 10 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. Since his time in the clink, he's become such a genius businessman and a trusted member of society that he deserved a $2 billion contract from the state.
What's up, family? Now, look, I try to keep things positive around here. I try to extract the life wisdom out of every situation. But sometimes you run across a story that makes you stop and shake your head because the hypocrisy is so thick. You could cut it with a knife, and that's exactly what we got today. We got two stories happening at the same time, connected to the same people, and the mainstream media is acting like neither one of them exist. First, a dead body was found at a rental property in Boston's Mattapan neighborhood, a home owned by Conan Harris, who is the husband of squad member Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Boston police rolled up to their house on Malta Street around 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and they found a young man dead from a single gunshot wound. Her name was Yoselana Martha. She was 18 years old. Her mother says she was killed in an act of domestic violence, and her mother told the news, quote, "This coward killed my baby. He put a gun to her head, took my baby in their house, and left her to die." Now, that alone is a tragedy, and you would think that would be all over the news, right? A dead teenager found at a congresswoman's property, but that's not even a half of it, because at the exact same time, Conan Harris is also facing massive backlash over a $2 billion state contract that he and his business partner just landed to build a new courthouse in Springfield, Massachusetts, as you heard in this clip. And the losing bidders have filed a lawsuit saying the whole thing is rotten with conflicts of interest. So let me break this down for you in plain English, because there's a lot going on here, and the media is doing everything they can to make sure you don't hear about it, right? So let's start with the dead body situation, because that's the part that really gets me. Now that Boston Police Department confirmed that the homicide unit is handling an investigation, red crime scene tape, officer posted at the property, the whole nine. And when the media finally did ask about it, Congresswoman Pressley's office put out a statement saying, quote, "The Congresswoman extends her deepest condolences to the impacted family." That's it. No press conference, no urgency, no national headlines. Now, here's the thing, family. And I want you to think about this. If a dead body was found at a property owned by a Republican congressman, especially a Trump supporter, you think CNN would be quiet? You think MSNBC, now known as MS Now, would be quiet? Come on now. Now, I hate to do the back and forth thing, Democrat, Republican thing, but I am advocating for equal accountability across the board. But my point is, they would have that story on the loop 24 hours a day. And they would be asking questions about who was living there, what happened, was the congressman involved, did he know about it, and why he isn't talking, or why wasn't he talking? And they would be camped outside that man's house with cameras and microphones. But because this is a squad member, a progressive Democrat, a woman who preaches about social justice and holding people accountable, suddenly nobody's asking the tough questions. And let's be real about who Conan Harris is. This man did 10 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. He is an ex-felon who spent a decade locked up. I'm not saying people can't change. I'm not saying people don't deserve second chances. But when you are a convicted drug trafficker married to a sitting member of Congress and a dead body turns up at a rental property you own that's listed for sale at $1.15 million, you would think somebody in the media might have a few questions, but nope. Crickets. And that's the part that's really telling.
Boston police are investigating the discovery of a body at a Mattapan property owned by the husband of Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Good evening to you. I'm Ken McLeod. The identity of the victim and the circumstances surrounding this are still a mystery tonight. WBZ's Logan Hall spent his evening in Mattapan.
There are still a lot of unanswered questions about this incident, but neighbors that we talked to on Malta Street tell us that there has been an increased law enforcement presence up and down this block. Boston police are investigating a dead body that was found at a property owned by the husband of Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. A spokesperson for the Boston Police Department tells WBZ News that the homicide unit is handling the investigation. Red crime scene tape sealed off the home on Malta Street, and a Boston police officer was seen posted at the property. According to records from the city of Boston, Pressley's husband, Conan Harris, is listed as the owner of the home. A WBZ source says Pressley and Harris do not live at the home. It's a rental property that is currently for sale. The asking price for the home is $1.15 million. In a statement to WBZ News, a spokesperson said, quote, "The Congresswoman extends her deepest condolences to the impacted family." WBZ has reached out to the real estate agent handling this listing, but she has not responded for comment. Reporting in Mattapan, I'm Logan Hall, WBZ News.
Now, here's where it gets even worse, family, because while this tragedy is happening, Conan Harris is also in the middle of a massive controversy over a $2 billion contract. And I need you to really pay attention to this because this is the kind of corruption that your tax dollars are paying for, and you're not supposed to notice. So the state of Massachusetts needs a new courthouse in Springfield. The current one is old and falling apart. So the state puts out a request for proposals, which is basically a bidding process where companies compete to build it. Now, the company called Liberty Junction wins the bid, and Conan Harris just happens to be a partner in that company through his real estate firm, Kojo Partners. The total contract is worth nearly $2 billion over 40 years. But here's the thing. They're not just building a courthouse and handing it over to the state. As you guys know, they get to build it and they get to keep ownership of the building, and the state has to rent it back from them for 40 years. And that's how you turn the $600 million construction project into a $2 billion deal. Basically streamlining. Think about it like this. If you need a new roof on your house and you hire a guy to put it on for $10,000, but then you tell him you'll pay him $5,000 a year forever to use it, that's not saving money. That's a lifetime payment plan for something you should just own outright. And Governor Maura Healey, a Democrat, is standing there in front of cameras saying this was the cheapest bid, and she's protecting taxpayer dollars. Cheap compared to what? $2 billion to run a courthouse for 40 years? That's not a deal. That's a heist. But it gets even dirtier because one of Conan Harris's business partners, a guy named John Barrows, was appointed as the interim executive director of the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, smack in the middle of this bidding process. Now, under Massachusetts law, state employees are supposed to disclose any conflicts of interest when they have a financial stake in state contracts. You know, basic ethics 101. But Burroughs didn't disclose anything. He didn't tell anybody that he was actively bidding on a $2 billion state contract while also running a state agency. He didn't update the proposal to reflect his new position, and he didn't file anything with the State Ethics Commission until after he found out they already won the bid. Convenient, right? So now the losing bidders have hired one of the toughest law firms in the country, and they are suing the state, saying the whole process was rigged from the start. And here's the part I really need you to hear. The lawsuit specifically requested all communications between Conan Harris and Congresswoman Pressley's offices. They want to see the emails, the phone records, everything. Now, the lawsuit says Pressley herself wasn't accused of any wrongdoing, but come on, family. Her husband had no prior experience as a real estate developer before marrying a member of Congress. None. He went from a federal prison cell to suddenly being a multi-million-dollar real estate mogul, scoring $2 billion state contracts, and you're telling me that's not a coincidence? You're telling me his wife, being a sitting congresswoman who serves on a powerful committees, had absolutely nothing to do with doors opening. I wasn't born yesterday, and neither were you. And the saddest part about all of this is that in the middle of this corruption scandal, in the middle of all this noise about money and contracts and lawsuits, an 18-year-old girl is dead. Her mother is burying her child. She's setting up a GoFundMe to pay for the funeral. And the media is more interested in protecting a political narrative than in asking the questions that need to be asked. So as you see this article on the screen, it says Squad, and this is from Fox News. Rep. Ayanna Pressley's ex-con husband slaps phone out of a man's hand as he tried to ask her a question. And I want you guys to see that in regards of the emotions, basically the immaturity of basically a lack of emotional dysregulation, but also outright just wrongdoing of an action.
Congresswoman Pressley, do you support? Sir, do not hit my phone out of my hand. Sir, Congresswoman Pressley, do you support President Trump investigating Somali child care fraud in Minnesota? Congresswoman Pressley.
Members having a very bad, no good week. Ayanna Pressley's husband miraculously got the winning bid on a $2 billion contract in Massachusetts, and the corruption stinks to high heaven. A couple of weeks ago, the state awarded Pressley's husband and his associates a $2 billion contract to build and run a courthouse, which they are then going to rent back to the state for 40 years. That alone is ridiculous. Anyway, in the middle of the bid evaluations, one of Pressley's husband's associates was appointed as the head of the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. This is a conflict of interest that's required by law to be reported and flagged, but mysteriously, no one evaluating the bids ran that one up the flagpole. And this guy Barrows, with the fancy job with the state, he never bothered to file that disclosure until after he learned that they won the bid. So now the guys with the losing bid are crying foul, and they hired one of the country's toughest law firms to file a lawsuit. And among all this fishy stuff, the law firm thought there was enough involvement by Ayanna Pressley herself to request communications between her husband and her offices. All communications. Did Ayanna think no one would ever see this and no one would ever ask questions? Probably not, because this isn't the first government money that her ex-con husband has gotten his hands on. How long you think it's going to be before she starts crying racism? It took a local journalist named Mike Urban to point all this out because Legacy Media in Boston somehow missed all these details.
Is that his wife, a psychiatrist, does not accept Medicare or any other insurance plan at her practice. You may also remember El Sayed campaigned with millionaire far-left streamer Hassan Piker, who once notably said that America deserved 9/11. El Sayed said Piker's comments had been taken out of context. But maybe the reason El Sayed is doing decent in the polls is because this is his competition.
I am going to be working on our behalf. I am going to be telling the stories on our behalf. And you better believe I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's
Senate candidate Abdul El Sayed is increasingly facing accusations of champagne socialism. And his tax returns are adding fuel to that fire. The filing shows El Said's household income for 2025 was over $686,000. That's nearly 10 times Michigan's median household income. And one reason the Medicare for All candidate is raking in cash and backlash is that his wife, a psychiatrist, does not accept Medicare or any other insurance plan at her practice. You may also remember El Said campaigned with millionaire far-left streamer Hassan Piker, who once notably said that America deserved 9/11. El Said said Piker's comments had been taken out of context. But maybe the reason El Said is doing decent in the polls is because this is his competition.
I am going to be working on our behalf. I am going to be telling the stories on our behalf. And you better believe I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's the Michigan way.
All right, family. So as you guys, let's read this article again from Fox News. This is another one in regards of company of squad members' husband lands $2 billion contract from Blue State for a new courthouse. As we read this article, it says a company where the husband of Representative Ayanna Pressley is a partner who was selected for a nearly $2 billion deal to build new courthouse in Springfield, Massachusetts, a decision now being challenged in court by rejected bidders who allege conflicts of interest tainted the process. Conan Harris, who has been married to the Massachusetts Democrat for more than a decade, is a partner with John Boros and Kojo Real Estate, which is part of the Liberty Junction team selected in early July for the 40-year courthouse lease, according to the lawsuit. The plaintiffs allege Boros' role as interim executive director of Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, MCCA, created a conflict of interest because several members of that agency's board also serve the Massachusetts Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, the state agency that selected Liberty Junction. The lawsuit also described Harris as having deep conflicts, quote unquote, but its most detailed allegations center on Boros' leadership role at the MCCA, another state agency. Pressley, a member of the squad, quote unquote, was not accused of any wrongdoing by the plaintiffs, and there is no evidence she was involved in the bidding process to rebuild the aging Roderick L. Ireland courthouse. Record shows the bidding process formally began June 30th, 2025, when DCAMM released its request for proposals for the Springfield courthouse project. The plaintiffs argue that when Boros became the head of the MCCA on January 14th, 2026, he did not disclose his participation in the courthouse bidding process to the State Ethics Commission. The lawsuit also said that Liberty Junction proposal was not updated to indicate that Boros has been appointed to a leading role on the MCCA. Massachusetts law generally bars state employees from having a direct or indirect financial interest in state contracts unless they qualify for an exemption, such as by making required disclosures to the State Ethics Commission and not participating in the contracting agency's work. Governor Moore Healey, a Democrat, defending the bidding process in a statement to reporters this week, saying the city of Springfield deserves a new courthouse, calling the current building sick, quote unquote. And this was a competitive procurement process. It was a competitive bid, and the project that was chosen was the one that cost the taxpayers the least. I stand up for the taxpayers. I'm all about supporting whatever is going to cost the taxpayers the least amount of money as somebody who wants to protect taxpayer dollars, Healey said on Wednesday. Massachusetts Physical Alliance told the Boston Herald on Tuesday that Healey administration should immediately pause this deal, release the relevant procurement records, conflict disclosures, scoring documents, and communications, and allow these allegations to be fully reviewed. A DCAMM spokesperson told Fox News Digital the project is about delivering a modern courthouse for the people of Greater Springfield and the employees who work there every day. And the conditional selection was made following a competitive procurement process, at the conclusion of which DCAMM agreed with the Massachusetts trial court's recommendation that the selected proposal represents the best value and most affordable option to the Commonwealth, the spokesperson said. All applicable procurement requirements were followed to ensure efficient delivery of a well-designed facility that meets the operational needs of the trial court while minimizing costs to taxpayers. So what's the takeaway here, family? What are we supposed to learn from all of this? Well, I think there's two things. First, you need to understand that the mainstream media is not in the business of telling you the truth. They are in the business of protecting certain people and destroying others. When a dead body shows up at a property owned by a conservative, it's front page news for weeks. When it happens to a progressive Democrat, it's a Tuesday afternoon that nobody talks about. And that's not journalism, that's protection, and they are protecting the brand, they are protecting the party, and they are protecting the narrative that says only one side is corrupt. But the truth is, corruption doesn't have a party. It doesn't have a flag. It doesn't have a color. It exists wherever power meets money with nobody watching. And the second thing is this, and this is where the life wisdom comes in. You cannot preach accountability for everybody else, Ayanna Pressley, and then hide when the spotlight turns on you. Doesn't that make it laughable? You cannot stand on the stage in Congress demanding reparations and talking about systemic oppression and redlining and appraisal bias while your husband, who did a decade in federal prison for drug trafficking, is suddenly worth millions of dollars, owns multiple properties, and just landed a $2 billion contract from the same government you work for. At some point, the math doesn't add up. At some point, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and ask if you're really fighting for the little guy or if you're just fighting for your own piece of the pie. And that's a question every single one of us has to ask ourselves, not just politicians. Are we holding ourselves to the same standard we hold everybody else to? Because the Bible says in Luke chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear of the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs. Now, for my brothers and sisters who don't do the spiritual thing, here's what that means in plain English. It means the truth always comes out. You can hide, you can hide it, you can bury it, you can pay people to look the other way, but eventually the sun hits everything. Every secret deal, every phone call, every contract written behind closed doors, every decision made to protect a friend instead of serve the people, it all comes to light. You can run, but you cannot hide from the truth forever. So as we watch this story unfold, as the lawsuits move forward, as more details about the young woman's death come to light, let's pay attention. Let's ask the questions that the media won't ask. And most importantly, let's hold all of them accountable, right? Let's hold all of them accountable, not just the ones we don't like. Hit the like button, share this video with somebody who needs to hear it, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, and leave me a comment telling me what you think about this situation. Do you think the media is covering this up? Do you think there's more to this story that we are being told? Let me know. As always, family, spread that peace and love, positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. As always, we just having a conversation. I'll catch you in the next one. On that note, family, peace.